edition. Our top story this hour, State Prosecutor Gerinel has wrapped up his cross-examination of murder-accused Oscar Pistorius. Now ended with a stark summary on the case, insisting the Paralympian murdered his girlfriend Riva Steenkamp deliberately following an argument. Pistorius is charged with murdering Steenkamp in his townhouse in Pretoria on the 14th of February last year. Nel said Steenkamp was locked into the bathroom and Pistorius armed himself with the sole purpose of shooting to kill her. Nel also asked Pistorius about the position of the magazine rack in the cubicle after he broke into the toilet. Pistorius claimed he heard the rack moving before he fired the shots. Ballistics expert Captain Chris Mangena previously testified for the state that Steenkamp fell onto the rack after she was shot in the hip. Pistorius has pleaded not guilty to the murder charge, as well as 3 contraventions of the Firearms Control Act.
It's the first time that you know that she's in the toilet, am I right?
That's correct.
Why did you not scream then?
I don't know what the purpose would be of screaming, my lady. I was overcome with sadness and I was crying.
What would the purpose of screaming have been when you hit down the door?
I was in panic, my lady.
But now you see her, now she's wounded. Aren't you now in even greater panic?
No, I'm not. I'm now broken, my lady. I'm crying.
You see, now you know that the state witnesses said that after the shots there were no screaming, and that's why you now don't want to scream. Isn't that so?
That's not true, my lady.
Because you see, I find it strange, sir. You've now seen her for the first time, that your panic would not have been at its greatest when you saw her through the broken door.
My lady, there was the state of panic is not knowing. When I saw Riva there, I was broken. I was overcome by just sadness.
No, you see that?
So I wouldn't have screamed out.
We now cross live to the North Gauteng High Court, where our reporter Patricia Visagie is standing by to give us a wrap of today's proceedings. Patricia, a very good afternoon to you, and thank you for joining us on PM News. Now, Patricia, a big surprise for most people today, with Nel ending his cross-examination rather sooner than expected. Please take us through what happened in court today.
Well, today saw the end of 6 days in the dock for the Paralympian. Of course, he spent 5 of those 6 days under intense and rigorous cross-examination by State Prosecutor Advocate Gerinel, who showed very little mercy as he took on the Paralympian, basically disputing his version that he had fired 4 shots through his bathroom door after he thought that there was an intruder. The advocate said that he actually deliberately armed himself and he shot through that bathroom door, knowing very well that it was Riva Steenkamp behind the bathroom door and not an intruder, as he had been claiming throughout this trial. And of course, that brought the state's cross-examination of the Paralympian to an end, ultimately giving the defense another opportunity to tie up loose ends. But Advocate Barry Roux did not waste much time. He basically just went back to, put emphasis on the defense's case. Yesterday, we saw the Paralympian basically, killing his own defense as he went by to argue from the original defense, which was a putative private defense, to what he had been saying that it has been an accident. Today, we saw Advocate Barry Roux basically, in a nutshell, telling the court once again that they're sticking to their original defense. They will be continuing to argue putative private defense. And of course, that also gave the defense the opportunity to call their second expert, and that is the forensic geologist, Roger Dixon, who is on the stand currently and will continue with his testimony tomorrow. But to take us through today's court proceedings, I am joined by crime analyst Laurie James. Laurie, now a much better day for the Paralympian on the stand today.
Yes, definitely. He was more controlled. The state, he was in a less emotional state. Gerinel did not, he was tying up loose ends, I thought. So there was really not the intense emotional pressure. There were no upsetting photographs, and this led to the, Oscar was better holding his own today.
Now, regardless of the version that he has put forward in his testimony, it seems like the state did not back down and they reiterated its case today.
Yes, they did. They had 4 days of testimony. What I saw today was a consolidation and a focus on tying up the loose ends and just clearing up a couple of questions that remained.
And Advocate Barry Roux taking over after the state wrapped up its cross-examination. And we thought that he would go into great length, but he didn't.
No, he didn't. And I think that was a very wise move on behalf of the defense. At the moment, with so many contradictions and so many problematic points in Oscar Pistorius' testimony, I think that they didn't want to perhaps raise further contradictions or create new evidence which Harinal would then have an opportunity to challenge. So keeping it short and sweet was in their favor.
Now, of course, today was a better day for the Paralympian, but yesterday you said he lost total control of his testimony. And you also said that it seems like he was testifying in favor of the state.
For me, it was almost that, and fundamentally he undermined his own defense by saying that he acted with intent to kill a burglar, then suddenly there was no intent, then it was an accident and the gun went off by itself. So literally he seemed very confused by what he was trying to put forward, and in fact confused about the fundamental element of his defense.
Now, was it a great call, or rather maybe, a wise move by the defense to put him on the stand, or did they not have a choice?
I don't think they had a choice. There is the state's version and there is Oscar Pistorius' version. The only choice they would have had would be to have made certain admissions and then not called him. But it was important for the presiding officer, I think, to see him, to be able to assess him, to look at his testimony and to cross-examine it. It was all important. And of course, it's always a risk when you put a witness on the stand because you never know how they're going to react under stress and pressure.
And of course, you told us about the risk that Oscar Pistorius now has two different versions to his defense.
Yes, he does. He has the defense of putative private defense, which in fact contains the element of intent. I intended to stop the burglar and therefore I shot. At one point he said he had no intent to shoot anyone, not Reva, not a burglar, not anybody, and he put forward that it was an accidental type discharge where the gun went off. He fired before he knew, and that excludes the element of intent completely and takes you back to an involuntary action, which is a totally different defense. These defenses are mutually exclusive. You cannot use both.
But of course, the state seemed to have really punched holes in his credibility.
Yes, they did, and the problem was that sometimes he had one version, sometimes he had two versions, sometimes he said yes, and then no, and then I don't know, and then I'm not sure. So, and then I don't remember. So sometimes we had 5 versions. So it is very, very difficult to figure out which one of these versions is in fact the truth.
Now, taking all the inconsistencies that Nell has highlighted in the Paralympians' testimony, would you say the state has succeeded in proving intent?
I think the state has put forward a very strong case. More than I think they've established intent as far as murder is concerned. I'm still a little bit concerned as to the element of premeditation. However, what they have managed to do is throw a huge amount of doubt on Oscar's version.
Now, some people have been asking throughout the morning why Advocate Harinal did not prove motive.
It is not necessary for the state to prove motive. It's a nice to know. Under our law, there is no need to prove motive. All they had to prove is intent. It was common cause. The actus reus was common cause. So they need to prove intent. They do not need to prove the motive.
Of course, with all those, all of the hard work that the state has done, and as you have just put, that they have put doubt on Oscar Pistorius' testimony, how much hard work lies ahead for the defense to obviously, try and wrap up the loose ends, and for the experts, which they're going to call to defend the Paralympian moving forward?
Well, now that they've decided that they're going back to a putative or a putative private defense as such, their experts will have prepared for this defense. And they're going to have to throw serious doubt on the state witnesses, and it's going to be a long, hard road, because you're always going to have the reference back to the fact that Oscar has many versions. So which version are they now going to try to prove?
Now, of course, we saw the defense calling their second expert, and that is Roger Dixon, the forensic geologist, who touched on several elements. He touched on the light visibility in Oscar Pistorius' room. He also mentioned that on the morning of Valentine's Day, there was no moon, meaning that it was pitch dark in the Paralympians' room. And what do you make of that?
He did do tests on the lighting. This is the first time we've heard any evidence about tests on the lighting, and it would appear that it was dark. He also has touched on various other things. He's touched on the bookcase. He's touched on the wounds on Reeva's back specifically and how they were made. His interpretation is that it was made by the bookcase. He's standing up well. He's got, in my opinion, he's a good witness. He's presentable. He's eloquent. But we'll have to see again once he faces that tremendous machine we call Harinel in cross-examination. How is he going to stand up to that?
Now, of course, one of the things that everybody is wondering about, that's the marks on the bathroom door. Today we heard Advocate Barry Roo questioning him about whether the bullet marks came before the cracks on the door, and he obviously went into great length into explaining that the bullets came before the cracks and not the other way round.
Yes, he did say so. However, what we have to remember in this situation is that this is one expert's interpretation. Another expert had a different interpretation. So we'll have to see who the court finds more credible.
All right, that is how we wrap our day today here at the Oscar Pistorius murder trial, the North Gauteng High Court. Of course, tomorrow when we return, the forensic geologist, Roger Dixon, will continue on the stand with his testimony.
Thank you so much to SABC reporter Patricia Visagie, alongside criminal law expert Ms. Laurie James, giving us a basic court proceedings today in the North Gauteng High Court.